Hello everyone, in this video we are going to do a follow-up on the Fortune leak video from last week. In the same theme we will cover the so-called Reddit EBO leak. This leak also comes from 2023 and was posted on the R-Aliens subreddit by a now deleted account. The poster introduced themselves as a person who worked between late 2000s and mid 2010s as a molecular biologist for a national security contractor in a program intended to study exobiospheric organisms, or for EBOs for short. The objective of this program was to decipher the genome and proteome of such organisms. This was rendered possible by the rapid progress of genetic engineering techniques in late 1990s. The program was allegedly partially successful and led to an elucidation of said objectives, but also to the explanation of our own place in the universe, in a sense. The main point was that the genome of such beings is a chimera including genomes from Earth's biosphere and from another unknown one. The beings were deemed to be artificial, ephemeral and disposable, created for a purpose that was never fully identified. The poster provided the reason for disclosure of their story. The story should be known publicly, as every human being has the right to know the truth. That, and in order for the humanity to progress, we allegedly need to let go of certain institutions and organizations which are unlikely to survive the revelations in the longer term anyway. This post was supposed to make a dent in the dam of stifling information and misinformation. The poster said what many in the UFO circles already said or suspected, that disclosure would inevitably lead to a social upheaval of sorts, but the longer we wait, the worse the upheaval will be. That said, the poster withheld certain information for the sake of their family and friends. A disclaimer followed, stating that there are going to be heavily scientific topics covered, which indeed were. With the poster having a PhD in molecular biology, some technical language was inevitable, and it would be inevitable anyway to provide sensible explanation. By sheer luck, the poster was at one point introduced to one of the senior scientists on the program. This was followed by a series of suspicious interviews which were not even focused on science for the most part. The poster was eventually presented with a non-disclosure agreement which they signed. The participation in the program started with a few weeks' worth of reading up on literature on the subject, internal reports, memos, procedures and so on, concerning almost exclusively the biology of the EBO organisms, although there were also mentions of things like their food, religion or culture. No documents on non-human technology were available. The team involved approximately 20 scientists, 4 senior scientists and a director, with people being generally overqualified for their actual positions. Everyone had to work more or less independently, as there were no supporting staff or even janitors at the ultimate site where the person worked. Speaking of which, the laboratory where the studies were carried out was allegedly located in Fort Detrick in the state of Maryland. Interestingly, it was also a location mentioned last year by Lou Elizondo as one of the places where, to his knowledge, non-human remains were stored at one point, but were later removed to another location. Without going too far into the technicalities, the bodies of the EBOs were preserved in horizontal freezers at minus 80 degrees centigrade. To further prevent the bodies from harm and decomposure, they were also stored in vacuum bags, and the air in the room was controlled for humidity. There were 4 incomplete bodies available for research, with the cause of their death being major trauma, possibly a UFO crash. The bodies were used as repositories of cells for genetic studies using cultivated cultures of the cell material and lines. The facility also had an intranet network provided for internal research purposes. Genetics of the beings was covered next. The bodies had material based on DNA similar to us, to the surprise of the poster. They are eukaryotic beings with shared ancestry to us, since their genetics does not only use the same system but is largely compatible too. This enables the insertion of our genes into an EBO cell and vice versa, with the result being genes translated into expressed proteins, which become non-functional after post-translation modifications. The genome of these beings includes 16 circular chromosomes instead of our own 46 more linear ones. Humanity knows about the existence of the so-called junk DNA regions where no longer used pieces, intrusions of DNA from viruses, and so on are stored. In our bodies, these structures are extremely varied, while the EBO organisms had them strikingly uniform. This provided a strong clue that the organisms were genetically engineered, since this is the most likely conclusion explaining said uniformity. The beings are simply said artificial or produced. Moreover, the way their DNA is formed suggests that whoever engineered those beings has much better, targeted, and efficient genetic modification technologies at their disposal than we have, and possibly used at the zygote stage of embryonic development. The same tools would enable the introduction of polymorphism, so engineering the beings with specific roles and functions in mind. But with only one full genome sequence, the poster could only provide an educated guess as to whether this is the case. Another striking feature was the fact that some of the genes were identical to their counterparts found in humans and animals, which seemed to have been just pasted into the alien genetic material. There were also genes clearly not found anywhere in the Earth's biosphere, further adding to the engineered nature of those beings. When it comes to their anatomy, the poster stated that they look very similar to the grey aliens populated in modern culture. The beings were approximately 150 centimeters tall, so approximately 5 feet, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. But there were also notable differences compared to the traditional depictions. The skin of the beings is described as a biosynthetic film which offers protection from the environment, but not against large temperature changes. It protects against the penetration of liquids though, and enables excretion through skin pores. The skin did not show any hair and was fairly regular other than folds where it needed to be more flexible, like at the joints. The head had 2 large eyes, 2 flat nostrils, a narrow mouth without lips, and 2 ear canals without earlobes. The mouth had no teeth or tongue and led directly to the esophagus. The beings seemed to have the sense of smell with their olfactory system present in their noses. The eye is covered with a semi-transparent biosynthetic film offering protection against certain wavelengths and light intensities. When removed, it revealed a more typical looking eye underneath, about 3 times larger than a human eye and without eyelids. This suggests excellent vision at night, while the film possibly protects against bright lights. Instead of 2, like in humans, they had 6 types of cone cells in their eyes, resulting in a wider visible spectrum compared to us. The ear structure suggested better hearing at low frequencies. The brain consisted of 4 major sections and is 20% larger proportionally than in humans. One characteristic feature of the brain were strange nodules, which may be responsible for interaction with non-human technology. The neck was longer and thinner than in humans, without traces of vocal cords present. The thorax showed underdeveloped muscles, although the muscles themselves roughly corresponded to those present in humans, with ribs and sternum also present. The abdomen is wider than the thorax and slightly protruding forward, without the navel. The pelvis was present without genitals or anus present. The hands and feet have 4 digits each. The fingers have no nails and the fingerprints include concentric circles. While humans move their fingers using muscles in the forearms as well, the EBOs seem to only use hands for the purpose. The skeleton was roughly similar to ours, but it also had copper oxide crystals where bone marrow is normally present in humans. The bones show no ability to grow or accommodate mechanically to changes in posture. The respiratory system seems similar to our own, using oxygen to generate energy. The lungs do not operate in both directions like in humans, but in one, similar to birds, and are also more efficient than ours. The membrane present between the lung sacs allows for vocalization, so the use of sound. The circulatory system is similar to our own, with a heart located centrally beneath the sternum. It has 4 parts too, and is connected to an aorta. A thing of note here is the fact that blood flows through a hepatorenal organ, so a combination of liver and kidneys, where metabolites are removed from the system. The metabolic waste is then transported to the limbs and excreted through thousands of pores in the skin. This waste includes ammonia, which may be responsible for the peculiar odor sometimes reported by experiencers meeting grey aliens. The digestive system and the endocrine or hormonal system are very rudimentary compared to ours. This leads to an assumption that the beings consume liquid food without much need for digestion, presumably some broth with higher than normal copper content. Said copper may be used in nanomolecular machines possibly present in their bodies. Their nervous system is very similar to ours without much difference. This exposé was followed by questions, one of which stands out, about the non-human intelligence's religion. They apparently believe that the soul is not an extension of a person, but rather a fundamental quality of nature expressing itself as a field, similar to how gravity works. In the presence of life, this field becomes more complex and locally overcomes entropy, with the complexity proceeding towards sentient life, resulting in what we usually understand as a soul. The soul experiencing reality interacts with the soul field and generates a feedback loop, which increases the field's complexity, which eventually leads to a critical mass of sorts, possibly an apotheosis-like event. The beings do not believe in this but know this to be true. The soul loses its individuality after death, but the memory and experiences continue to exist as a part of said field. This results in a culture which does not fear death, but also pays no attention to individuality, also in line with what many experiences have observed. This belief system propels the beings to seed life and proceed with the soul field enrichment. This information allegedly came from a document prepared by a person who interviewed a live EBO, so a live alien, in unknown circumstances, and the means of communication were not specified in the document. Last but not least, the location of the lab was openly mentioned there as a Battelle National Biodefense Institute. This is pretty much it. I omitted certain scientific details but have provided a link to the full post below so you can read it in even more detail. What do you think about this particular leak? Is it believable? Let me know in the comment section down below. I myself am not a biologist, so I definitely do not have the detailed expertise here, but with my background in natural sciences, the scientific part of the presented material looks at least somewhat believable and fairly solid to me. Still, we'll probably not get to know if the post was true or not, at least not very soon. All that said, I am also looking forward to the news in the UFO field. We have the new task force responsible for declassification created under the leadership of Representative Anna Paulina Luna in the US Congress, and we are approaching the month of March, so the premiere of the Age of Disclosure movie, and we got to know that Steven Spielberg's Disclosure movie was postponed until June 2026. Today we saw the bombshell of news mentioning David Grush as the executive producer of another Disclosure-related movie, so this is quite an exciting development in many ways. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you soon in another video. Take care.